But I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
the roll call, everybody's here except Julie. I know she's,
She should be attending, was my understanding. Our first order of business is the oath of office, which both Mr. Steffes and Mr. Bush will take this evening. Just a note that even though we're taking the oath of office today, the actual term starts on April 25th, so Mr. Lindsay remains in the seat until that day, and then Mr. Bush will commence his term on April 25th. So for purposes of tonight, if there was a vote to be taken, it would be Mr. Lindsay voting this evening, not Mr. Bush, and Mr. Steffes would carry on as his current term. So with that, if you would raise your right hand and read the statement before you, that would be your oath.
how's that sound? All right. I, undersigned, have been elected on April 5th, 2016 as a member of the school board of the Mineral Point Unified School District, but having not yet entered upon the duties thereof, hereby certify that I am a citizen of said school district, and swear I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability. So help me God. All right.
Thank you very much. You sign, and then we'll date it and notarize it, and you'll officially be sworn in. Congratulations to both of you.
Oh, she did. Oh, sorry.
That's okay, I thought it was a new one. You have to leave, Susan, you have to.
That's yours.
There's another rolling chair over there on the side of the table. If you want to roll it up, we can all keep it up.
All right, let the record show Julie is here. All right, go ahead.
Second item is just approval of staff resignations. There is not really a retirement. Both Brad Rogley and Tom Behrens most recently have submitted a letter of resignation. So we would move from a district perspective to accept those resignations. It's with deep regret and remorse that both are moving on to other adventures in other school districts. But we wish them well personally and professionally, and I'm excited for their career opportunities that lie ahead of them.
Is this contingent to the end of the year or immediate?
This would be commencing with the beginning of the school year 16-17. I'm sorry, 16-17. So they would finish up their current contract year, and then this would be vacancies that we would look to fill potentially for next year.
Do we have a motion to accept letters of resignation?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Sorry.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carried.
And then the final item on the agenda this evening is what prompted the discussion for tonight for a special board meeting. We do have with the resignation acceptance of Brad Rogley as our elementary principal. There was a question about whether or not to reduce that administrative FTE or repost the position. So I put that before the board for discussion, and it could be an action item tonight if it so chose.
All right. Who wants to start off?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Well, I would like to hear from the administration a history of the position. I don't think it's been a full-time FTE for that long. So, you know, what has been the history? I mean, there have been many people in the job, done a nice job.
Sure, I can start, and there might be somebody that has some more history than I, and maybe Vicki is probably the historian in the room with regards to that, but prior to my arrival, if we go way back, which would be maybe 10 years less, It was at the elementary position, you would have either Kelly Seichter or Chris Olson was serving as the elementary principal. At that time, Jeff Bindle was serving as the Director of People Services and School Psychologist. And then you would have Ted Evans serving as the middle school, high school principal. Vicki Dahl was a health teacher and athletic director. As we rolled forward, and what I inherited was a model where Terry Heeman was for a year filling up a position that was vacant mid-year and was the superintendent elementary principal. At that time, Ann Paulskill was serving as the Director of People Services and was moving into the elementary position, if I understand that correctly. This was just prior to my arrival. Ted Evans continued to be the middle school, high school principal, but had resigned. So the structure as I inherited it was Ann Paulskill was the elementary principal and Director of People Services. Upon that, we hired Claire Knoll to become the school psychologist. Vicki Dahl was still a health teacher at that time and an athletic director, and Mitch Wainwright was hired as the principal, taking over Ted Evans' position as a middle school, high school principal. With educator effectiveness coming on board, the evaluations became much more intense, from going from one evaluation for each staff member every 3 years, one time every 3 years, to annual evaluations with multiple informal walkthroughs, formal visits, observation, follow-ups, and so forth. The estimated hours being between 10 to 12 hours for returning staff, 12 to 15 hours for a year for new staff. It was a pretty significant load to balance between two people, Ann Paulskill and Mitch Wainwright. And so we added, at that time, probably 2 years, would be into my third year and my tenure, Vicki Dahl as a half-time administrative position. She gave up her health teacher responsibilities. Those went to other physical education teachers. We absorbed them in the district. And shortly after Ann's departure, we replaced Ann's position with Brad. Claire moved on as school psychologist to the Dodgeville School District, so we hired Dixie to replace the Director of Pupil Services school psychologist position to replace Claire. And at that time, then Mitch went on to focus just on the high school, but picked up other responsibilities like the district assessment coordinator. So there's been certainly a lot of iterations. I believe this hiring, if reposted, would be the 6th elementary principal in 10 years. I think body for body, we haven't added additional people, but when we look at it from reclassifying people that were teachers to administrators, yes, we have added a half-time administrative position when we brought Vicki into the administrative role to personalize the school at the middle school and to help oversee the evaluation process. But the number of staff that have been serving these positions has remained pretty consistent back to the Jeff Bindle, Chris Olson days.
And
Kate Martin was here.
since,
Kate Martin as well.
I mean, Kate Martin was the elementary school principal for, how many years?
She was K-8, long time, she was like K-8.
So, I mean, there has been somebody down there for quite some time.
And I think too, when Kelly Seichter left and Terry Heeman finished out the year as elementary principal superintendent, there were 2 extra duty contracts for Quinn Schultz and Scott Schmidt, who went down to the elementary to oversee the elementary while Terry came up here to this office. So,
Good to know.
yeah.
2 years ago, is that about when we switched to having the teachers not be evaluated every year, but instead being evaluated every 3 years, once every 2 years?
The answer to that is they still have to have a formal observation every year and informals over a 3-year cycle. But yes, it was 2 years ago that the summative evaluation, that takes a look back of 3 years, was moved from an annual summative to a 3-year summative. But that didn't go back to what would be the old model of just one formal evaluation every 3 years. It's still an annual formative evaluation, actually 2 formative evaluations for our newer staff, and then the informals are over that 3-year period as well. So it's still ramped up significantly over the model that we left, but it's not as rigorous as the model just 2 years ago.
And when you say newer staff, how new is newer?
New to the district employees, anybody with any experience that comes new to the district in their first year would be under a more intensive evaluation process. And then all new teachers that are hired in the district, special education ed specialists or teachers as well, for 3 years would be under an intensive evaluation model. And that's required by the state.
So there's not any, you don't foresee any new teachers in that intensive evaluation at the elementary school next year, correct?
I'm wondering if there's any that are still in that model. Is Ms. Feinborn in year 3? Would she still be in the, no?
Yeah, she wasn't new to the profession though.
That's right, new to the district, but not the
She
profession.
was in her summative year last
And
year.
I'm not aware of any retirements or resignations.
I have one, two, at least two that I know of that would be as on a 3-year, because they're brand new out of the gate.
That are under you,
Yeah.
but they're not under the
The
principal.
elementary, no.
And how much, since we hired Joelle, did that help relieve the elementary principal of some of the communication responsibilities?
Yeah, do you want to speak to that, and maybe Brad?
I would actually say that the elementary handled a lot of their own communication responsibilities pretty well. My office is up here, so as much as I try to be equal in both, I'm definitely not. And they handle their pointer press every week by themselves. They do pretty much most of their Skylarks by themselves also. We just set that up just because they know better than I do what's going on down there, so.
After every lockdown drill or anything that's elementary specific, either myself or Heather will just send it out, so. If I were to go back to the evaluation process, there are 24 staff members currently under the elementary principal's guidance, if you will, or that would be their caseload. So just in looking at that, 24 is a surmountable number to split between folks, And given the attention to detail needed for those, it's, I can see why the decision was made a few years ago to move to move Vicky into that, position at the middle school, just to kind of even things out. It's quite a process.
You do a summative evaluation, so there might be some veteran teachers that are on a summative evaluation. I have veteran teachers in this building that are on a summative evaluation. So it isn't just, nobody's in one in a given year. You try to rotate that out because it is a lot more intensive and time consuming, both for the teacher and the building administrator. So there probably will be some people, not necessarily new, but
How many do you have
under that
currently this year?
summative.
I have 10 on summative this year, but that vacillates a little bit. There's been some moving, but 10, so then the other 14 would be over the next 2 years, so 7, 8. We try to keep it around 9, 8, 9, but it just ebbs and flows a little bit.
But you're still evaluating every teacher every year.
Is it appropriate to interject? I would also interject another comment. We've been talking about over the last few months, what is it that we want, our schools to be, and obviously we want great test scores and we want all those things, but I also think school safety has come up, and I'd be concerned if we're looking in a different direction and not having somebody in that building on a daily basis. As I talk to the folks at the exit interview, I think having someone there for those 350 elementary age students and 50 staff members is really important. And not to say I'm not out of the building every now and then, and Dixie and I do a great job of covering for each other, but just having somebody in that position, I think, would be advantageous. I would recommend.
You were saying that going back, let's use 10 years, the number of administrators has only increased by one half of one teacher.
I would say the number of administrators that we classified as administrative position has, I think, technically increased by a half. It's kind of how we restructured the model. You know, Vicki was always here, and we were always paying a salary and benefits, but we reclassified her from a teacher to an administrator, and you know, that's part of that shift.
You know, I am gonna leave eventually. You guys are making me feel ancient to be back here. Oh, Vicki was here, you were here.
Carbon dating over here, so.
Well, prior to the construction of this building, we had 3. Dr. Gruber was the administrator, the grade school principal. Marv Hanson was the middle school principal, business officer. And Merle Freimiller was the high school principal.
More students out of it, same.
Or
Would have been more, for sure.
I don't know, I just looked at the high school enrollment back in '87. I just happened to run across something. It was 267, so that looks to me like about, 30% decrease.
This PLC program, to make it less difficult for principals or more?
I think there's certainly, it goes hand in hand with, where the state was with regards to accountability measures in the schools in the 1980s versus where they are in the 2015s. We have a lot of state mandates that we just have to attend to that weren't present back then. And in order to get that high level of accountability on your state assessments and get the scores that we have, the PLC process needs a lot of administrative oversight to assist teams with defining the essentials, assessing those, and making sure that we have interventions in place and kids are being grouped in ways that help them learn and make sure that truly, and this is the shift, is that every child succeeds. The No Child Left Behind is really the shift that focused and ramped up things, coupled with the evaluation process that was adopted along with at the state level for educator effectiveness and making sure that you have high quality teachers in the classroom. All of these initiatives are really laborious and intensive compared to teaching and administrating back in a different era.
But on the other hand, the teachers are working more collaboratively, so that if a teacher was having an issue, it seems to me like they would be comfortable talking with their colleagues and their peers and being able to, in many instances, work something out where you wouldn't find so often a teacher working in isolation that really needs to rely on a principal to help them on whatever the issue might be.
The principals are gaining accountability to the PLC process by asking to see documents that are being used and utilized inside of the PLC process. I would contend that the first 3 years that we operated as Mineral Point under the PLC model, we would be called PLC Light, L-I-G-H-T. We were acting through the PLC process, but we weren't doing PLCs. And it wasn't until the administrative presence the last 2 years really formalized the process that we've gotten to the level that we've gotten to. So I don't think that you can leave it to teachers to do the good work of PLCs without having that monitoring and accountability, and I would even go further to say support to help and guide them through some of the questions that they're working through. I think it's an instrumental piece to the success that we've had. Our scores have been trending up, they continue to trend up, and they've never been higher than they were in the past year, and I would anticipate that our work this year is even more intensive, and the PLC process should yield even more results. But certainly, if there wasn't the same presence, I couldn't guarantee the same types of trends or results. I would be very skeptical that we could continue to trend in this way.
Could you come forward with some sort of scenario where there would be an administrator down there, and where all of the essential functions of the principal are still being done by various people, so that, you know, we're not neglecting, you know, so that we can maintain, you know, the academic excellence that's going on, but have somebody down there without having to hire somebody new?
In my opinion, no.
Well, if you had to, you would come forward with something.
Sure, I think the caveat was and still maintain the same level of services and attention in academics and so forth. If you collapse positions, we will not simply by just looking at all of the functions that are currently being done, there will be less things that will get accomplished. And we'll have to reprioritize our days and our daily work. And then if you specifically focus on making sure that the elementary functions just as it is, that by nature is going to take something off the plate from somewhere else. And so to say that the caveat is and look the same, I couldn't bring back something that would say we can do this with less. However, if the question is, can we bring back something? We would bring back something that we would not recommend, but yes, we could bring back something to make sure that you would have coverage to the best of our ability. I couldn't guarantee around-the-clock coverage. There's still essential meetings that have to happen outside of the district at each role and responsibility, and it would actually, if you combine positions, probably take a person out of the building more, not less.
Has anybody touched on the district assessment coordinator part of the role? What that entails? You talked about educator effectiveness, but I haven't heard the testing.
So just to continue with that, thinking, you know, this year I've been working as the district assessment coordinator, as well as, you know, completing a lot of the activities that ELL coordinator would complete is in this within the district. And those things have taken me away from the elementary school. You know, the middle school got started with their Wisconsin Forward exam testing. A couple weeks ago, we experienced some glitches with internet connectivity and different things, and that pulled me out of the building to do some of those things. But I was still able to go back and support, you know, if nobody is there to start with, and then there's the, you know, some test in the middle school, high school has to be supported by niche, or, I mean, it just, you know, yes, there could find coverage, but it certainly complicates things. You know, and I would even say the visibility in the hallways and being outside, and I try to, before school, after school, have a presence and those sorts of things. I think community members and parents and you know, staff members appreciate those things. And I'm willing to do recess duty and help out and do that, and I think that those are all things that staff members appreciate it when you're willing to pitch in and do some of that as well. So
I think one of the most important things that we have to think about too, and it's just with kids too, is consistency. Discipline, handling situations, parent contacts. If you have multiple people doing it, it is multiple people doing it their way, the way that they think is right, and it becomes very dissonance between, you know, the administrators or the fill-in people with how they're handling things, and the inconsistency with students and how problems are solved or handled. I think it's going to be disarray. I think it's going to stir a lot of issues in the public and the perception of how efficient and effective we are. If there's not a consistent entity, I think that Mitch being at the high school, it's consistency, you know, and even between Brad and I being at the elementary school, I mean, I take on special ed, but he and I really did know each other, but I knew certain consistencies, and I always, whether I agreed with it or not, I always did what he would have done, because I knew how important it was to keep that consistency, and vice versa with me in some of the situations. So I think with just all with kids, I think consistency is huge, and I think when there's not consistency, there's a lot of room for error and mistrust and.
Well, I would assume that anything you come back with would entail some consistency and not disarray. I mean, if you put one person in charge of the discipline down there, or, you know, then that would avoid this disarray that you're concerned about.
But if you don't always have somebody consistently, I mean, there's behavior problems happening from
Right, but if you have
7:45 to 3:15. And, you know, some of those have to be handled before the kid goes home to the parent. If there's somebody in blocks of time during that.
I think it's similar to what we talked about at the regular board meeting in April when we were talking about the additional 7th grade staff member or taking away a 6th grade teacher, and it was brought up, well, so many years ago, we got by with this. Well, and I mentioned how much education has changed, and with special education, RTI, interventions, and I think we're looking at the same thing here with administrators. You know, when we're talking about the evaluation and how much time you put in, you know, with these teachers. So I think we're focusing on, well, this is the way we used to do it, and things have changed.
Significantly.
Well, it's a problem of perspectives. People that have students want everything for their child. And the staff wants everything that they can get in order to affect this. But the people that are struggling to pay their taxes and buy groceries, they have a little different outlook on it. That's the problem.
I'd be interested, and I don't know if we can even pull facts, but if this position were to be eliminated, given our current state funding system, where when you don't spend money, the state thinks that you don't need it, they give you less aid the following year, and then you have to backfill on your taxes. I don't know what this would look like in savings to our district if this position were eliminated. I don't know if we can even get that info, but I'm thinking it might not be as great as some people might think it is, so.
Well, it's about time people took an intelligent approach to this, approached the legislature and got it so your aid was so much per student instead of having on this stupidity of you're in Milwaukee, you get more money or whatever. This ought to be just per diem. And I'm just gonna throw something out to you. Did a little research on that team that we played in the state finals in girls basketball. Their tuition is $9,500 a year. Now, I don't think that and that's for the non-church members, so I think that they're probably doing it for $9,500 a year, which is considerably less than we are. And if people are paying $9,500 a year for their kids to go there, evidently it's a pretty good school or they wouldn't do that.
If I remember right back, when we combined the positions, during the Heeman administration, did we hire a part-time secretary for the position? And did anybody remember that we paid Terry more to?
Yes. You paid Terry Moore to cover the elementary as a principal, but then you also paid additional money to have Mr. Schmitz and Mr. Schultz work down there to cover the elementary office when Mr. Heeman was up here in the superintendent's office.
Did they put in more hours or just went down there?
They went down there and got paid additional money for it. Yes.
So instead of prep time, study hall, they went to the elementary school, therefore they had an extra duty.
All I know is they had a contract to go down there for discipline.
Terry got 20,000 a year,
You were on board with me then.
Yeah.
20,000.
Do you remember what we did for a secretary? Did we?
We had just 2 full-time ones down there. What do we have down there now?
Okay.
And Jean Flanagan was up here, the district office.
Was she was only part-time though, up until that point?
No, she was full-time.
Yeah, it was just, I think it was just a change.
Wayne was out for the longest time, but I was thinking we had one more that we floated. And the extra duties were probably $2,000 or $3,000. That sounds about right at the
I'm
time.
not sure what the,
I'm pretty sure it was about
Yeah.
2,000 they got extra.
But Terry's increase was 20,000.
they probably got just a month's money.
I should have mentioned, Board President, that you did have one person sign up to speak tonight, that was Mr. Bushner, so.
I just wanted to sign it in case I wanted to.
Oh. You didn't tell me that
Is,
part.
sorry, is a lot of this extra time and put in because of this No Child Left Behind? I thought we were getting rid of that, or was that just,
It was replaced. There's a new law that replaced the No Child Left Behind law, and that is still being worked out, but it does push a lot of the federalization of education back down to the states and local control. But a lot of that hasn't been decided by the states yet as to how they're going to handle the reauthorization. So you're right, No Child Left Behind is no longer existing. But the replacement law is still with an educator effectiveness program, so that will remain in the state for sure. It still has an accountability measure, so that will remain in the state as well. It still has the revamping of the special education laws, which has been a significant transformation over the last few years. Those laws will remain in place. And we can get into the weeds in that a little bit, but essentially it's repackaged, but at a level that should allow states to be able to dictate more of what happens in each state. So you might see some variance from state to state.
yeah, I recall, I read, I guess, something about that, I didn't think about it too, started going through it there. How much money do we get from the federal government a year?
I can pull that up. It's
Well,
probably
I
the
don't need
smallest
to know right
fraction of
now.
our revenue
Pardon?
source. It's the smallest fraction of our revenue source by far.
That's why I don't know why they don't get lost, do the things they're supposed to do and leave us alone so we can teach the kids.
Andy,
Yeah, I guess my concern is similar to last meeting that, and I think Luke touched on it, is that our levy is going to be our levy. I mean, I appreciate the people that have an issue with their property taxes, but I don't see a situation where as a board, we're going to under levy and put ourselves in a position where in the future, we're not able to obtain that revenue back without a referendum. And once we under levy, we've under levied for, the considerable future. So it's more a matter of what bucket are we putting it in. The tax revenue will be the same. Are we taking it from administration to put it into Fund 45? And while that seems like a good idea, is there a correlation between the current administration, the way it's staffed, and our improvement in test scores, and our improvement in overall achievements of the children? And the other thing I would just throw out there is, in talking to people about this issue, is that it sounds like we did, and maybe Luke can confirm, we did have an issue when we had less administration of getting some of our state aid in the special needs area, in the billable revenue area, because of time, because of understanding, because of resources. So it's potential that the position pays for itself if the billable things and the revenue and the grants are done correctly anyway. So just points I would throw out there.
Well, many years ago, which you may find irrelevant, but I was at a board meeting when I asked, throughout the question administration, if our children were doing a third better than the children in Cuba City and Belmont. I said, no, why? And I said, well, they're doing 20%, 10, we got down to 0. And Mr. Freimiller said, no, they're probably not doing any higher on on their achievement tests, and I said, well, why not? We're spending 33% more money. We were spending like $82 or $300 a year, and they were spending $62 or $300. And then at that time, Dr. Gruber said, well, our children are getting a better education. I said, if we get a better education, why don't they score higher? Well, they're still getting a better education. I said, they aren't scoring any higher. Finally, we got tired of going around that tree. He said, just goes to show that the people of Mineral Point are willing to spend more money on education than the other people are.
If we were to consolidate positions, let's just take 5 minutes and discuss that. It certainly would have an impact on whatever person we would put in the elementary school on a part-time basis or whatever the case may be. Do you have a recommendation, would be your first recommendation if the board chose not to give you another principal?
No, we haven't even contemplated that because we're hoping the board doesn't make that determination, but if you did, then we would have to start a process to give that some consideration.
Could we have it by next regular meeting, or does this have to be decided tonight?
There's no reason it has to be decided tonight. Certainly, there are principalship positions that are already posted and closing around us, and there are people that are candidates that have understood that Brad is taking a position in Platteville that would apply in Mineral Point, but they need to answer to other school districts. And I said the best I can give you is an indication coming out of this meeting tonight of what the board is thinking, and if we were to post a position, it would allow them to apply and either accept, reject, or delay another offer that they have pending. But that's a real-life scenario with real-life candidates that have approached me and are waiting to see what the board does. So it just takes people off the plate. It locks other people in other districts. The earlier we can have a posting, the more successful pool of candidates we'll have.
Roughly what, 110,000 position, the salary and the benefits?
Usually we post a salary that's commensurate with experience. We posted Brad's job 2 years ago at $75,000. We did a quick study when we renegotiated contracts for the elementary principal. We have a better understanding of what the trend is for salaries for elementary principals in the southwestern part of the state. There's a model where elementary schools are moving away from a combined position with superintendents to all elementary principals when they were combined. I'm not aware of any other school districts that are contemplating combining, but I can share some that have moved away from that model, including ourselves just 5 years ago. Then you would add in benefits, which could be single or family, so that could flex a little bit. But I think for a budget perspective, I think a 95 to 105, 115, somewhere in there would be an appropriate budget item, which is similar to the budget line item that we're already carrying in the current budget. And currently, as we forecast forward, we should be able to provide a balanced budget. We're not going to need to go to referendum this year, that's for certain.
That balanced budget would include that raise you got the last meeting.
Correct.
A little more information from Brad. What do you think, Brad, if we decided not to put a full-time person down there in that building? Progress, where we've been, where we are at now. You think they can carry on? I mean, the staff could carry the torch when there wasn't a person in the building?
So, as I kind of talked about at the exit interview even a few days ago, I think that, the staff they do tremendous things, they work very hard, but I think in any position, there are reasons why you put leaders in places for accountability and all of those things. And, just having a person visible, just even in the classrooms, and I try to be in and out of classrooms every day. And the PLC process, to go back to that, by asking the right questions and being there, I would be concerned about taking a step back. You know, you're on such a positive trajectory, your test scores are doing so well. The PLC process in the last 2 years is just skyrocketing, and your test scores are following. And I'd be really apprehensive to move away from that. And then just to go back to, they just need to see the position, they just need somebody that's visible in that position. So.
Now, is Dixie down there full-time, most of the time?
No, I'm between the whole district, so I'm,
You're all three buildings, or both of them?
yeah,
More so down there though, or?
not recently. Like today, I spent an entire day up here, so that's good.
When Ann left, one of the top things that the elementary staff put out there as something that they would really love to see is to not have somebody be the principal and the director of pupil services, because that position takes somebody out of the building so much. They wanted somebody in the building that could be in the building on a much more regular basis to be able to deal with their needs and the needs of the kids and everything else. You know, that was high on the priority list of the elementary staff themselves 2 years ago, so.
And I would say is if you're gonna do that, then you need a school psych. So now you're gonna have to hire a school psych, because that would be 3 positions for one person, and I do gifted and talented on top of that. So Ann didn't do the school psych part of it.
Speaking of what the teachers think, has it been a survey of the teachers to help us know what their view would be on this?
There's a survey that's currently out there right now that's an overall wellness and climate of the district, and has multiple questions, but we have not surveyed the staff with regards to their desire for the next candidate, because we don't know if that next candidate's a combined position or if it's a standalone position. But if we were to go forward with the reposting, one of the first things I would do is survey staff about what are the things that they're looking for, the attributes they're looking for their next principal, and I would do that with community as well as our administrative team, to try to gather from the stakeholders that are involved what qualities are most important when we look at a new principal. If it trends like it did 2 years ago, it would be what Mitch had stated, is somebody that's dedicated to instructional leadership. The second thing was longevity in the district. Those were the 2 that we attempted to hire for. And I would imagine those would be 2 that continue to be high on the list. There may be other things that they're looking for. I would imagine somebody with a strong understanding or command of the professional learning community process would be a look for in their candidate pool. So, you know, we know that survey hasn't been conducted. Once we get direction from the board as to how we are going to repackage this position, then we would try to survey the staff to learn what types of attributes under what type of model would be the best fit for what they're looking for.
Do we have any internal candidates, do you think?
I've had more than one internal candidate express an interest, yes.
But an internal candidate would mean that you'd have to hire somebody to fill whatever role they're doing now, like if they're teaching.
That is correct.
What if your office was at the elementary school?
You want to take that one, Angie?
No.
Okay. If my office were at the elementary school, the question would be, when I'm doing elementary principal work, what happens to the superintendency work? And when I'm doing the superintendency work, what happens to the elementary principal work? There will be required meetings as a superintendent on top of required meetings as an elementary principal, and other duties that would be assigned along with that would be determined, that would pull me out of that building. And there would be needs for that inconsistent approach and touch to students that are looking for that consistency. for the teachers that are looking for the consistency of having somebody to go to with questions, concerns of the day. So Terry didn't use the model of completely immersing down at the elementary because I don't think it was a sustainable model. I think he understood better than anybody that you can't be the full-time superintendent and the full-time elementary principal and work out of just one office in one place. There's going to be times where we have meetings that we need a space as a superintendent to meet with people that are coming into the district. We don't have any spaces at the elementary for conference rooms, meeting rooms. So we would be forced to come up to this building to have larger group settings, meeting with vendors and so forth that are coming through would be redirected back into the elementary building. That would, I think, be a potential distraction. We already have high traffic volume going through the elementary doors, and to take all the superintendency traffic, it would be just problematic. It would be problematic.
How many required meetings is there a year for you versus one of the principals? Are we talking 5, 10, 50?
Yeah, good question. Between the CISA PAC meetings, your SIP meetings, the DAC meetings, any professional development and training, DPI required meetings, professional development with regards to professional organizations like WASB, WASDA, OSA at your level, it basically takes everything I'm doing and doubles it, and it takes whatever Brad would be doing and would be doubling it.
When you were in '87, do you remember, you had the 3 administrators, Dick Austin at the time would have been the athletic director, correct?
Right.
Would we have had a director of pupil services as well, psych, or?
I don't recall one.
Psychologist, there would have been. Mr. Austin got paid for 2 extra duty hours.
2 extra hours, that's all.
2 extra hours was all he got.
Just curious how the transition's gone.
But things may have changed
Yeah.
since then. It requires more than that.
Well, like you say, the reporting stuff is different now. What I just referenced about the cost back then, you might think I'm bumbling old idiot, but I forgot to tell you the line that makes it all relative. We had probably 850 students at that time, and at $2,000 a piece, that means we were spending $1.7 million a year without any increase in achievement over these other districts. And I mean, I don't say that this applies to this situation in any manner whatsoever, but it's kind of something to keep in your mind. You know, spending a lot more money doesn't always get you any more final achievement, product, whatever you're doing.
I mean, I'm just gonna throw this out there, just in my conversations with as many people as I can possibly talk to in our community here over the past few days. The feedback that I've got is overwhelmingly that they would like to see a strong presence within the elementary school. The thought that we're considering not having a full-time principal at the elementary, you know, they're fairly outraged at the fact that we're even considering it right now. You know, Vicki will be mad at me for talking about her retiring again, so I apologize, but everyone that I've talked to said, you know, if that does happen at some point in time, wouldn't that be a more logical scenario to rethink your administrative staff at that point in time if it does happen? But the elementary principal just seems like the wrong spot in my mind to consider.
I feel like, you know, I've tried to put some teasers out here to get these people, these administrators, to be very explicit with you with all that they do. And I am a regular attendee at the admin meetings on Thursdays. I'm not an administrator, but I go for awareness purposes and communication purposes. And I went in with predetermined ideas, not gonna lie, even though I hold an education degree, of what administrators do. And I have learned an immense amount about the work, and I still don't know it all because I'm not an administrator. But they're not gonna sit here and they're not gonna tell you, you know, about everything, because for the most part, they're very humble people. And they put in way more hours than I can even imagine. And I know we all do at our jobs, so that's not necessarily unique. But it just, you know, if you, I wish they'd tell you, because, or feel free to go ask them, but they probably won't tell you without, you know.
Matt, you kind of answered my question. My concern was, it was asked if the staff had been surveyed as to what they would like down at the elementary, but I was wondering if, as the group here, Board of Directors, you're the voice of the community. So how many of you have discussed this and had conversations with community members to find out what their wants are as far as the children down at the elementary?
I've got a number of them. And unfortunately, the majority I've talked to wants to see us cut the administration, but I don't think this is the appropriate time. And it's not that I'm looking for Vicky to retire. We all know that Luke's been looking for years. We all know Luke has been looking for years. I'm not trying to knock you either, but it's like, I think that, I like the strong presence at the elementary. I think it's very important. And I think down the road, you know, depending on how a referendum may go, we may not have a choice down the road as to what we do, but I think right now we do have a choice. And I would opt to say that I think the position should be filled at this point. And I'm gonna get slammed tomorrow.
I would say more often than not, what I hear from people in the community is that, what are you doing? You're going against recommendation after recommendation of your administration, and it just doesn't seem like decisions are made based on kids and the direction of the school. And when you see positive things, it doesn't seem like the board is taking a lot of that into consideration. And consistently, I've talked a little bit about the accountability that goes with every time we struggle when we are asking the board for a recommendation, and then we do the hypotheticals or the what ifs, and then we kind of tweak it. And I get that there's got to be governance, but I think that what I consistently hear is not that we need to cut the administration, it's that we need to believe in the leaders that we have here and trust that they're the experts and that they're doing good work for our kids, and allow them to do the work that we're paying them to do at a high level, rather than not really taking that into consideration. That's what I hear.
Well, if we're gonna do that model, what we should do is go to a different setup and just have an annual meeting and tell Luke to run the school, and an annual meeting to decide vote whether to keep him for the next year or not, and disband the board.
There are all sorts of options.
Most of my hear is like you said, I think we're over administration, but they don't want to cut this. So I hear quite a bit. And I'm sure I talked to a lot older people than you do.
Yeah, right, we talk to different people, I mean, it's absolutely the case.
Yeah.
District assessment coordinator, Brad, that's what you currently hold. Explain that to the board.
So every assessment that takes place within the district K through 12, so we have literacy screeners that are under state statute. Currently it's PALS. We also do an interim assessment, STAR, both in reading and math. The Wisconsin Forward is an assessment that's a summative assessment at the end of the year, grades 3 through 8 and grade 10. Access for ELLs, any student that is an English language learner has to take an annual assessment. In the high school, and I have to be honest, Mitch does a lot of the heavy lifting, but all of those things for the ACT, Aspire in grades 9 and 10, and the ACT and ACT work keys are all things that Mitch takes care of. But what DPI, the Department of Public Instruction, sets up is they want a clean conduit. They want one person that they communicate to in every district that handles everything assessment, and that's the district assessment coordinator. Because even when this position shifted last year, when we talked about it last summer, we said, why don't we do the Kodak, you know, and no pun on the photography folks, but anyway, we talked about that, and and DPI wouldn't allow that. They said we want one DAC per district, whether it's Milwaukee Public Schools or Mineral Point. It's one person that gets all the communications. So that job in and of itself, and this year we're doing the Wisconsin Forward, which is a new assessment. Access for ELLs, that's a new assessment for me. It all went online. Whether you give it to 5 students or 500 students, you have to know it well. You have to know it intimately. You have to know how you code everything, what you can do, what you can't do. And it takes time to do that position, to do it well. And when you run into issues with technology, who are you gonna call? The person that's in charge of it, and that's the DAC, and that person had to come over and put fires out and do all that work. And I enjoy it. I enjoy working with, numbers and student achievement and all those things, but on the backside of it, to make sure that everything is in place so that on your school report card, you're not getting demerits and losing points because you're not doing things appropriately, and you're not reporting things the right way. You need to have somebody holding that and really being accountable to making sure all paperwork and everything's done in the manner it should be. There's a lot of work with that position, and I learned it firsthand this year. But same thing with the ELL coordinator. It doesn't matter if you do it with 5 students or 50 students. You have to know it inside and out, and it just takes time.
How many hours a month or a week would you say you have parent conversation, parent interaction, questions, concerns, confusion with parents of students?
With regard to either testing or with regard to behavior or?
Anything. In general.
Yeah, it's hours a day. Usually when you walk in the door in the morning, you can tell how the day is gonna go when you see the flashing red light on your phone. If it's not flashing, it's a good start to the day. If it is flashing, okay, let's go and see what's going on or what's there. So, and you're on call, you get phone calls, just like, it's just a part of what you sign up for.
And you return every call you get, every email.
When my mother passed away and I logged off for a day and a half, when I came back on Wednesday morning, there were 96 emails waiting in my inbox, and yes, I returned every one of them. But your inbox never slows down. It doesn't matter what goes on in life, your inbox doesn't slow down.
I think Brad has done a tremendous job from a public relations standpoint for our school, and all of our administrators really do, and he's touched on it about the visibility and, the principal approach. That's huge at any age. I think establishing early on positive authority figures with kids sets a good tone for years to come, and that stuff maybe you can't measure it on a school accountability report, but I'd argue that you can, because that creates a positive school culture. It makes kids want to come to learn. And that stuff really can't be understated in my mind, the PR side of that. But unfortunately, I worry that that's the stuff that's going to take a back seat if the person is spending all the time doing the DAC and doing the accountability stuff that we're getting our aid on and we're getting all that. So that's a concern for me.
I would piggyback on the staff component as well. I don't have any data to support this, but anecdotally I would tell you I believe the culture is in a much better place today than it was 2 years ago and 5 years ago. And I would tell you that the middle school has a level of personalization, and it feels like its own building inside of a building, and teachers feel valued and respected, and kids have a go-to principal with a consistent behavior plan. And that has really resonated with a lot of the middle school teachers that have seen that personalization firsthand. They no longer feel like they are getting what's left of Ted Evans when he's done with high school. Likewise, the instructional leadership at the high school has been able to get its full attention because it's not divided between a middle school and a high school and all of the other things that are happening. The model is set up in a way that I believe is best to succeed for this district. When I think about what would impact learning for all kids, trying to take a person that's in charge of 50 staff and 350 kids and smash more duties into a full-time job is not going to be in the benefit or best interest of learning for all kids, especially at that elementary level. We've got a fantastic model. It's working really well. And I would just strongly encourage the board to pump the brakes on this one. And there'll be other opportunities when we are faced with a referendum to have to make cuts, to have to show that we have no option but to make difficult decisions. We don't have to make this now. We have a budget that can carry and support a full-time elementary principal. I would want that for my own children, and I would hope
Any other comments?
I'll make a motion that we post a elementary principal.
you have a second? A second by Lisa. Any further discussion?
I think that, I think that's a good motion, and I think that, the board needs to have a little input on what the salary and benefit package will be if we decide to hire somebody pre-approved by the board. So we don't end up with a situation like we've had in recent meetings.
Excellent amendment.
Do you want to set the parameters right now?
You know, I want more information.
Okay. All right, is that okay with your second then too? All right, we'll do a roll call. Angie?
Glenn, Glenn?
No. No, I was just kidding you, I just wanted to see what. My wife always says that most people don't understand my jokes.
Everybody's gonna see it on video now, it's their favorite thing.
So just to restate,
Here we go.
Pardon?
you are in favor of posting
Yes.
the elementary? Lindsay,
Yes.
Stevenson,
Yes.
Basting,
Yes.
Dolphin,
Yes.
Hay,
Yes.
Stefas.
Yes.
Thank you.
That was it for the agenda.
That is.
Motion to adjourn.
Does this mean I have to retire in 2 years?
And again,